Happy Halloween.
And welcome to Scenecraft.
From opening shots to long takes and epilogues, we examine our favorite scenes from cinema here on the podcast. I'm Cody, here with my co-hosts,
Mark
and Connor.
You can find Scenecraft on most social media platforms at Scenecraft Podcast for the latest news on the show. Today, in celebration of Halloween, we will be discussing William Friedkin's horror classic, The Exorcist. But first, as usual, let's begin with our brief What We've Been Watching segment, Quick Takes.
Speak quickly.
Quickly, thank you.
Quickly, come on. Hurry up, quicker.
Way quicker.
Okay, I'll say it fast.
So what have you guys been watching?
I'm going to start us off with Searching for Sugarman, which was directed by Malik Benjelloul in 2012. The logline reads, two South Africans set out to discover what happened to their unlikely musical hero, the mysterious 1970s rock and roller Rodriguez. So this has actually been on my watch list for a while. I think I first heard about this movie after listening to an amazing episode from the Reply All podcast called The Case of the Missing Hit.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's a
great
great
You guys
one.
remember that
It's a
episode?
classic. Yeah.
So good.
You guys introduced that to me, and I
Uh-huh.
now spread that like sermon to everybody I possibly
yes.
can. Yeah, it's so good.
It's a must listen.
Yeah.
It basically details the process of this man who is in search of this song that has seemingly vanished. And all he has to use is really just being able to recall a few lyrics and a melody. And so after absolutely loving that episode, I had heard comparisons to this movie and I knew I had to see it. So instead of focusing the entirety of the film on the musician himself, the story actually focuses on the search for him and why he never became as widely revered in America as he was in South Africa. I don't want to give too much away because I absolutely loved this documentary. And I'm actually not alone in this because it actually won the Oscar for Best Documentary in 2013. So I would strongly recommend checking out this one. It's currently streaming on Max, the one for HBO.
Cool. I've always been meaning to watch this.
Yeah, me too. I've heard such great things from everyone who's seen it, and I really want to check it out.
Yeah, I know I'm a little light on the details, but that's just because if I went into any kind of depth, it would just immediately spoil stuff. So
Got it.
the next movie I saw was actually in preparation for today. I saw The Exorcist Believer, which was directed by David Gordon Green. I know, a little bit of a surprise there. And that was directed this year, 2023. The logline reads, when two girls disappear into the woods and return 3 days later with no memory of what happened to them, the father of one girl seeks out Chris McNeil, who's been forever altered by what happened to her daughter 50 years ago. So, like I said, in preparation for today's scene selection, I decided to go out to theaters today and actually see this film.
Wow.
And a little bit of a backstory, David Gordon Green, for those who may not be familiar with him, he's most well known for his involvement with several Danny McBride projects, such as Eastbound and Down, Vice Principals, which is a personal favorite of ours, and The Righteous Gemstones. And his film, I would say Pineapple Express, is probably the most popular. He also recently directed an entire trilogy of new Halloween movies, the most recent of which was released last year. I'll go on the record for saying that I actually liked that trilogy, even though they don't hold a candle to the original Halloween. I still like some of the decisions that he made with that trilogy. So with that, I went into this movie and the plan was for this Exorcist Believer to be the first of another set of trilogies by David Gordon Green. Unfortunately, the movie has been rated quite harshly from critics, and so it's unknown what his involvement is going to be in the next two films, which is a long way of saying it's kind of a shame because I ended up enjoying a majority of this movie as a result of his direction. I would say 75 to 80% of this film is actually really well directed and brings up some interesting societal issues to grapple with. I think it is a bit too bogged down with the fact that it needs to acknowledge the original for its own good. And unfortunately, the ending left me a bit disappointed. I think this movie is perfectly good to watch for an eerie, spooky time. And so I would give Exorcist Believer a light recommendation, and it's currently available to rent at home.
I'm glad you liked it. I thought it was going to be a stinker for sure. So
I did too, and maybe and maybe that tempered my expectations a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Connor, what have you been watching recently?
So I saw Dream Scenario, directed by Christopher Borgli, and it is due to release in a couple weeks, November 10th, 2023. The logline reads, a schlubby professor who never made it becomes an overnight celebrity after appearing in every person on Earth's dream. Well, guys, I have been a busy boy these past 2 weeks.
Yes, you have. How many films have you seen?
I know we texted about it, but I've seen 11 movies over the past 2 weeks, which might be a new Scenecraft record.
Oh my gosh.
It was the Chicago International Film Festival here in Chicago, so I lived my second life as a movie critic, and as soon as I was done with work, I hustled over to the theaters around town for an early sneak preview of some great movies from around the world. My favorite thing I saw at the festival this year was Dream Scenario, and lucky me, I got to see this one with my good friend and co-host Mark.
Hey, yeah, it was a great time.
Which was very fun. This is the English language debut film from Borgli, who's a Norwegian filmmaker, and it's an A24 film. I thought this was a super fresh blend of satire, comedy, horror, and social commentary all rolled into one. It's also one of those unique movies where I can't imagine anyone else pulling off the lead role for this except for Nicolas Cage. It just seemed tailor-made for him. He's great in it. Definitely go check this one out when it gets released. I don't want to say a lot more, but it's a very original concept that's full of fun cameos and really just a wild ride that leaves you thinking about it in the days and weeks after you watch it. So I would recommend it.
Very cool.
I also watched May December, directed by Todd Haynes, and that one is due to come out November 17th. The logline is 20 years after the notorious tabloid romance gripped the nation, a married couple buckles under pressure when an actress arrives to do research for a film about their past. This was my second favorite thing I saw at SIFF this year. I absolutely loved it. I wasn't familiar with this story, but it's based on the famous scandal of Mary Kay Letourneau, who was a 34-year-old teacher in Seattle who had an affair with a 12-year-old student, Vili Fulau, and later married him after going to jail twice and giving birth to one of their children while she was actually serving her prison sentence. Yeah, it's a really messed up story. This is a Netflix movie with Julianne Moore and Natalie Portman, and they were the big draw for me. They're both so talented, and their performances in this are incredible. I won't go into too much detail because it's better to go into this one not really knowing what to expect, but this movie has one of the most unique tones I've ever seen. I know I told you guys about that, but it blurs the line between real life and tabloid drama in this very highly dramatized way. And I thought it was just a haunting and darkly funny look at how our culture can turn trauma into entertainment, which we often do. So I would also recommend checking out May December when it hits Netflix in a couple of weeks.
Wow. Got a lot to catch up on, clearly. I'm glad you had such a good experience at Chicago International Film Fest.
It was awesome. Got to see a lot of great stuff.
That's great.
What about you, Cody? What have you been watching?
Okay, so I had a chance to see Killers of the Flower Moon, the new Martin Scorsese film. The logline reads, when oil is discovered in 1920s Oklahoma under Osage Nation land, the Osage people are murdered one by one until the FBI steps in to unravel the mystery. So, critiquing a movie, like you were saying earlier, Connor, part-time film critics here, it's a really interesting thing because in a way you have to balance what the movie actually is versus what it could be, in your own mind, theoretically. And I think what is actually there on screen for Killers of the Flower Moon, to me, is nearly flawless. It has the scale and the breadth of some of Scorsese's masterpieces like Goodfellas, but tonally, it has a lot of Western imagery, which is new for Scorsese. So I'm really glad to see that one of the greatest filmmakers ever is tackling this genre, because I love the genre. This movie is absolutely brutal, and it's harrowing, as it should be, because it's important to illustrate these atrocities that were done to the Osage in an effective way. I think the all-star here is Lily Gladstone in the role of Molly, who plays the part in such a quietly powerful way. And this leads me to what wasn't there on screen. And I think that there's this disparity between the anti-racist theme of the film and the choice to tell the story from Leonardo DiCaprio's point of view in his role as Ernest Burkhart. I think the movie could have benefited from more time spent inspecting the perspective of the Osage, which, given the 3.5-hour runtime, I think that would have required giving up other character arcs. So that would have been amazing to see, but I think in the end, I did truly respect what was on screen and love the movie that Scorsese did decide to make. So I highly recommend seeing Killers of the Flower Moon in theaters if you can, definitely. And really quick, since we're not doing a main scene selection for Flower Moon, I thought I would just quickly shout out one of the most beautiful shots I think I've ever seen in any movie ever. Just keep an eye out for the first appearance of an owl in the movie. There's one shot in particular that is just jaw-dropping. So take a look and bathe in the composition of that shot. It's just really amazing. Wanted to call that out.
Awesome.
So glad you liked this. I ended up seeing this movie with my parents, and we went to kind of a late showing. I think it was like a 7 o'clock start. And then with previews and everything, by the time we were done, it was close to 11:30 or so. Not only did all three of us stay awake, nobody used the bathroom, and everybody loved the movie. So
Wow. It's a tall order.
Yeah.
3.5 hours. I'm scared, but I am excited to see it.
it's amazing.
Awesome.
And then next up, I saw Priscilla, directed by Sofia Coppola, and it comes out in a couple weeks. The logline reads, "When teenage Priscilla meets Elvis Presley, the man who's already a meteoric rock and roll superstar becomes someone entirely unexpected in private moments, a thrilling crush, an ally in loneliness, and a vulnerable best friend." I'll keep this one a bit quicker and distill it down to this. I didn't love Priscilla, I liked it. Because the story is told through such a classic Sofia Coppola lens, it has a distinctly quiet, observational texture to it where you're almost getting a series of glimpses into someone's life and relationship, but it's a double-edged sword in that way because with that can come this aimless feeling, as if the movie doesn't quite know what it wants to be.
Okay.
But I'd still absolutely recommend Priscilla, especially if you watch it more as a conceptual portrait of isolation versus like a traditional biopic similar to 2022's Elvis.
Yeah, cool. I'm looking forward to checking this one out too. There's just so many good movies coming out over the next few months.
Yeah, and I'm curious to get your thoughts because I know you're a big Coppola fan.
Yeah, both Mark and I are.
Yeah,
We'll report back.
cool. Now, let's move into our discussion about 1973's The Exorcist, directed by William Friedkin, starring Ellen Burstyn, Jason Miller, Max von Sydow, and Linda Blair, among many others. And as with all of our scene selections, beware of spoilers ahead.
See the cross of the Lord. Begone, you hostile powers. O Lord, hear my prayer.
Let my cry come unto thee.
The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
I cast you out! The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
The logline for this film reads, "When a young girl is possessed by a mysterious entity, her mother seeks the help of 2 Catholic priests to save her life." Connor, how was your rewatch? What did you think of The Exorcist this time around?
It was great. I loved it. Always love rewatching this movie. But first, I just wanted to acknowledge the passing of the legendary filmmaker William Friedkin earlier this year. Rest in peace. He was one of the great directors of the New Hollywood era for anyone who's not familiar with his work. And the 70s are like my all-time favorite period of film, just for me. But from the mid-60s to the early 80s, there was this big shift from the old films of the studio system to new avant-garde films that were led by visionary directors who were inspired by the non-traditional films made over in Europe at the time. So Friedkin came up with Francis Ford Coppola, Scorsese, Peter Bogdanovich, Woody Allen, John Cassavetes. The list goes on. There were a lot of really talented filmmakers making films at that time. Right before he did The Exorcist in 1973, he made The French Connection in 1971, which won Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor for Gene Hackman, and Best Film Editing. I haven't seen that one yet. I really want to. I want to make my way through his whole filmography eventually. But on the heels of that, he goes on to make the quote unquote the scariest movie of all time with The Exorcist. So after Friedkin passed away in August, a couple months ago, I got on a big kick of watching his films, and I'm actually almost done reading his very long memoir, The Friedkin Connection, and it's been super fascinating of a read. His career is really interesting because it's so uneven. He has two major hits almost, right off the bat with The French Connection and The Exorcist, which was the highest grossing horror movie of all time until It came out in 2017. And that's not adjusted for inflation either. It was just a massive, massive hit at the time. Then 4 years later, he goes on to make Sorcerer in 1977, which I know we've all discussed.
Mm-hmm.
But it completely bombs at the box office, and it basically kills his career. So he was infamous for his temper. He was nicknamed Hurricane Billy. He fully acknowledges that in his book. But it's also pretty clear he was all about sticking to his vision, and he would do whatever he could not to compromise the integrity of his films. In the case of The Exorcist, it meant subjecting his cast to really long, hard shoots, hours upon hours in makeup for his actors, many takes, and even going so far as slapping actors to get reactions out of them. So it's like not a lot of great stuff.
Yeah, I heard he fired guns as well.
Yeah. He's like a sort of infamous kind of character in the filmmaking world.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let you guys talk more about the movie itself, but I'll just say that I love The Exorcist. It's such a treat rewatching it. I think it's terrifying for what it represents, something evil taking over a loved one. But I think what I love most is how real the characters are in this movie. Chris, the mother, has real agency, and she's not a thinly drawn woman character, which we've seen so many times. She's at her wit's end, yelling at the doctors who can't really tell her what's going on with her daughter. And Father Karras is haunted and tortured by the death of his mother. He's at an age where he's kind of wrestling with his faith and thinking about hanging it up. And then there's Regan, who is a very genuine 12-year-old girl and not like a stereotypical movie kid that we've all talked about before.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mark, what did you think?
I actually saw this film for the first time earlier this year.
Mm.
And talk about a movie whose reputation arguably precedes itself. There's obviously a lot of praise for this film, which led to a tremendous amount of hype.
Yeah.
And luckily, I was in good hands with Friedkin because this movie is outstanding. One thing I really appreciate about him as a director, after having watched Sorcerer recently as well, is that he really throws the audience into the story with very little hand-holding. And it's because of this, we don't have to waste too much time over explaining everything, which just adds to the unease and also the mystique of a horror film. To me, this film is about loss of control. Regan loses control of her body. Father Karras loses spiritual control of his faith. And for a character like Chris McNeil, who is a famed actress living in a house with an entire team of servants, she's used to getting things her way. And whether it be on a film set or around the house, when she slowly starts to see the world of medicine failing her in treatment of her daughter, we get a glimpse of a character who's losing control over the safety of her daughter, which is probably one of the most terrifying thoughts there is.
Yeah.
So this movie was extremely effective. I loved it. Cody, what did you think?
Yeah, I saw this for the first time as a freshman in high school with a bunch of friends at like a little Halloween get together. And thinking back, it really was like a scene out of a movie. So picture this. I'm sitting on a couch with about 8 or so other people. Half of them are like making out. A few of them are just asleep. But the telephoto lens, of life slowly creeps in on me, who's just sitting in the middle of it all, the weirdo who's like totally mesmerized by The Exorcist and just zoning out everything happening around me.
Amazing.
Just staring like wide-eyed at the screen. So masterpiece is, we've talked about this, it's definitely an overused term of art, but it really does apply here. It won 2 Oscars in 1974, nominated for many more. Really the first horror film to win an Oscar, and it's had such a great legacy of fandom and respect ever since, with a number of sequels and spin-offs, some of which are actually really good. Despite its truly disturbing imagery, challenging themes, I had a blast watching this again and loved it even more.
Oh, great.
So let's get into the scene selection, which we're going to call The Exorcism. Connor, would you give us the scene beats, please?
Sure, I'll do my best. Reagan McNeil, who's a 12-year-old girl, displays increasingly disturbing behavior, including outbursts of violence, as well as supernatural phenomenon that are kind of unexplained. After medical and psychological treatments fail to explain her daughter's condition, her mother, the actress Chris McNeil, enlists the help of Father Damien Karras, who's a psychiatrist and a priest wrestling with his own faith to treat her. At about an hour and 45 minutes into the film, Father Karras and the experienced exorcist Father Marin confront the possessed Reagan in a harrowing battle, using prayers and holy relics to expel the demonic presence from her, ultimately resulting in both characters sacrificing themselves to save her. Our reason for choosing this scene, this is the scene in the movie, and really one of the most iconic scenes in all of cinema history. You've got a lot happening here. You've got special effects working overtime in the levitation, the makeup, the projectile vomit that's happening, the very tense and over-the-top sort of the power of Christ compels you, like famous quote that's happening from Father Marin and Father Karras. A lot of really foul and like disturbing language coming from Regan. So I think it's safe to say this is still shocking today and unlike anything that I have ever seen in another film. What did you guys think?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was funny. I was rewatching the movie, and my wife would come into the room periodically when I was watching it, and she was kind of unsure if she had seen it or not. And then obviously when the exorcism scene came on, she's like, "Oh, I've totally seen this."
Yeah,
And she
yeah.
sat down and rewatched it, and had her fingers over her ears and like was like like tightened up into like a little ball. So it's extremely effective, and for
Yeah.
the reasons you mentioned. I mean, there's these demonic flashes that kind of jump onto the screen almost in a semi-subliminal way. We see this like really crazy, creepy tongue that she sticks out. We have a 360 head turn. There's all these practical effects, like you mentioned, and it all just kind of adds to this overwhelmingly frightening sequence.
Yeah. Well, let's start with this, guys. With the scenes acting as sort of a microcosm of the film as a whole, what do you think makes the scene so effective and scary?
So I think for me, one of the scariest parts of this scene is how the demon who's possessing Regan knows something about each of the characters that like she wouldn't otherwise know. It's a devil, it's a demon that knows about Father Karras's mom passing away and makes some really graphic references to her, which we won't repeat here.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, Connor, I love how in the movie, those intimate details that the demon calls out, like if that's not proof enough that there's something supernatural, they still have doubts as to whether this is like real.
Well, right. And I think it's the characters, especially Father Karras Damien in the scene, you see him like recognizing and really grappling with that. He's already had his faith tested. They've established that earlier in the movie. And he's really shaken by what he's hearing from the demon's mouth. And the fact that, Regan being possessed is kind of like laughing. She's like incredulous. It's almost like this really off-putting, unsettling behavior that we're seeing, vacillating between screaming, groaning, like flicking her tongue out, like Mark said, and like puking. It's just like all manner of disgusting things is what makes it really scary and disturbing for me.
I think for me, I completely agree with everything you just said, Connor. In addition to that, to me, it's almost kind of like the end of the rope for basically all the characters in the entire movie. The mother's at her wit's end. These two priests are kind of, they're going to try one last shot to cure her at this point. And we just see Reagan's condition just deteriorate to the point where her skin is literally just kind of like falling off her face, right? And
Ugh,
so
yeah.
it's the it's the end of the line. And so there's a tremendous amount of stakes there. And then in addition to that, it doesn't rely on, running around the house and just having the house go crazy. It's all taking place in one room. And
Yeah.
so it just something about the setting and being very familiar with that setting, and also seeing it change so much from when she was a cheerful 12-year-old girl at the beginning of the film. Now we see the same room and it looks completely different.
Hmm.
And so it's just the lived in experience on top of everything else going on that just really kind of chills you to your bones.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that you guys called out when we were talking pre record is that I think this scene, on a level previously never accomplished and rarely accomplished to this day, is that what you're seeing on screen visually, you also get the olfactory smell sensation of what you're
No, right.
of what you're seeing.
Yeah.
Because between the, like you said, Connor, the projectile vomiting, just all the bodily functions, everything happening that you're seeing on screen, it's like that must be a putrid smelling
Yeah.
experience in that room, and you just have to sit in that discomfort. It's like so effectively done.
One thing I'd like to add to that, Cody, is I think another reason why this is so scary is because honestly, it's because of Friedkin's commitment to the film.
Mm.
A lot of the practical effects, a lot of the conditions of the set were made so that the characters and the actors themselves were reacting to real things. And so you just get these performances that you wouldn't have otherwise gotten with CGI. And I know we harp on that a lot on this podcast, but this is a really good example of that.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Mark. I think the production design and the special effects, like that is the thing in this scene for
Mhm.
sure. It really makes it.
Mhm.
And I guess we could just start by talking about the sets. So, a key part of this scene that's different from what we've seen in the previous parts of the movie, the room itself is like extremely cold. You're seeing the actor's breath.
Oh yeah.
It's established that it's like basically below freezing somehow. Maybe the demon can control the temperature in the room,
Mm.
but the appearance of the room itself is very, very cold.
Mhm. Yeah, which is definitely jumping to cinematography a bit. It definitely lends itself to that cold feeling because our
Hmm.
color temperature in the scene is really cold, really blue, and really making you as the audience feel that temperature. And it's kind of an interesting subversive choice because of the fact when you think demon, you think hell, you
Yeah,
think Satan, you think like fire.
red.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you think red. And it's kind of
Mm.
this opposite choice, like hell frozen over type
Uh huh.
theme. And I love that they went that direction instead.
Yeah, and going off that coldness, and Mark, you were mentioning Friedkin's commitment to actually really making that as a practical effect. So the bedroom set was built within a refrigerated cocoon on top of which were four large air conditioning
Oh
units.
my God.
So this is all to make sure that actors' breath would be really, really visible. It's not like an effect they added after the fact of filming it. Each night they'd have to turn on those air conditioning units until the following morning. So they would run overnight. And when they got to the set, the temperature dropped to 30 below zero. So it's like extremely cold. But after they turned the set lights on for an hour, the temperature would rise to levels above freezing. So they'd have to do this back and forth thing where they'd shut off the lights, build that cold back up again. And it was all like very process of elimination, figuring it out as they go. None of it was originally budgeted, but there was no other way to achieve that effect.
Wow. And I would imagine the performers are like really suffering being in that environment.
Yeah, for sure. I read that the crew had to wear insulated ski suits and the cast had to rely on long underwear. I guess like everybody got colds and the flu except for Linda Blair, even though she was like wearing the least out of
I was gonna
everybody.
say, yeah, she has like the least protection. That's crazy. Yeah, Connor, you mentioned that the lights would actually cause the temperature of the room to increase. And so
Hmm.
because of that, they were actually only able to film for about 3 minutes at a time. And
Wow.
so because of that, they were they only got 3 to 4 setups a day and they were working more than 12 hours. And so the complete scene took a month to complete, which is just
Wow.
crazy.
Worth it?
Yeah, I
no,
would say so.
Definitely. But
I mean, it's easy
such-
for us to say.
Right. And outside of the cold that we're seeing on screen, which took so much work, there are also a couple other things going on. There's the ceiling cracking, there's the bed moving, there's the levitation happening. So in order to like make all of this happen, a lot of effects going on within this set, all of the walls and ceilings were actually movable. So they could put that camera and sound equipment anywhere in the room to get that shot.
Yeah, and I had read somewhere that some of the camera operators were also attached to wires to like really get close to Linda Blair, like as she's on a wire floating, and so much intricate
Wow.
choreography had to be done here. And I just wanted to call out two of my favorite little touches in the scene. There's a specific shot, like you say, Connor, the ceiling cracks, but there's a different shot of the door cracking. Which is like through telekinesis, it's like slammed shut and then the door kind of cracks in half.
Right.
I love that. Like they could have just slammed the door, but no, production design, Friedkin, whoever it was, is like, no, I want the extra level of the door should kind of splinter in half because it really shows the power of how hard that door slammed and the power of this entity. And then there was also this one particular shot, I think it was like right before the levitation, where the full blanket is kind of whipped off of her really suddenly to the corner of the room. It's such a cool visual.
Obviously, one of the more memorable images of the scene would be when she starts to levitate and she actually takes like a Christ-like pose up in the air. I had read that they used really thin wires that were suspended above a false ceiling to achieve the levitation. And one of the grosser aspects, and we've kind of alluded to this a little bit, would be the vomiting. I mean, I feel like that's almost as iconic as the scene is in general.
Yeah, so it was a mixture of oatmeal and like really thin pea soup that gave it that gross greenish color. And I think they ran like a really long, thin tube up Linda Blair's nightdress and her like really thick makeup at her neck, and then had that tube kind of shoot stuff out of her mouth so it would spray onto Father Karras and just like kind of spray out. So, I mean, a whole rig had to be set up to get that effect. But I was like disgusted by the shot where it hits Father Marin on his glasses and it's like all goopy.
I heard for that, they rehearsed it with her vomiting on his chest. And it wasn't until they started rolling that they actually like hit him in the face with it. So some of his reaction was like real.
Genuine.
Yeah. It's also just gross because it's just like dried up on her face.
Right.
And yeah, I just very unnerving.
And there's like steam coming off of it. Yeah, it's disgusting.
They just nuked the pea soup oatmeal concoction like 2 seconds before putting it in the... Oh, God.
Probably.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. Yeah. I mean, Linda Blair's commitment to the role as a child actor with like tubes running up with prosthetics and the things you have to like sort of lip sync in a way and the way she has to contort her body. I mean, this is like an all-star performance, like especially for like a young kid.
Incredible.
I mean, it took a long time to find Linda Blair. I think Friedkin talked about looking at hundreds and hundreds of casting options for that role. And it was a woman who actually contacted him. She had heard about the casting call and brought in her daughter. It was Linda Blair, and she just instantly got along with William Friedkin, and she had a grown-upness to her, but also still like a very genuine, innocent quality that was just right for Regan. So he felt like that she would be the perfect one to play the role. An incredible performance from her.
She was also injured on set, if I recall. I think she had a vertebral spine fracture from one of the bed shaking scenes, which is brutal. I mean, 12 years old, that's just...
Ooh, Mark, I'm going to have to insert this little bumper for you.
Is there a doctor in the house?
Mark, can you also talk about Ellen Burstyn's injury. In fact, multiple people were injured on set.
Yeah.
This was like
Yes.
a cursed production in that way. She hurt her back, didn't she?
Yeah, I had heard that when Regan slaps her across the face and she flies backwards, she landed on her tailbone, her coccyx, and actually fractured that.
Ugh.
And if I'm not mistaken, that delayed production another 2 weeks. And those injuries are notoriously very painful because depending on the type of fracture, it's not something that usually requires surgery, but it's just something you have to just kind of put up with in a way.
Wow.
There's obviously restrictions, but I've heard it's incredibly painful.
Oof. Yeah, that's rough. And I'll go on a slight tangent, but I noticed, Cody, you mentioned the production was cursed. I had a couple, not fun facts, but just facts that explain that a bit more. So the set that we're seeing here in the Georgetown house, the Chris McNeil's house, halfway through production, it actually completely burned down in a freak accident, and they had
Oh my
to
God.
totally rebuild it. So like production had to pause for that to happen.
Whoa.
Max von Sydow, his brother, unfortunately died the day they were supposed to shoot this scene that we're talking about.
Oh my
So they had to
God.
postpone the shoot again so he could fly back to Stockholm for the funeral.
Whoa.
And this is very weird, but one of the radiologist technologists that's in the arteriogram scene later went on to become a convicted serial killer.
What?
Paul Bateson. Yeah. Very weird. And to top it off, they edited the film at 666 Fifth Avenue
Ooh.
in New York
Oh
City,
my
which is
gosh.
just a coincidence.
Whoa.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
One last thing I wanted to add, because once again, we're talking about iconic moments in this scene, would be the head turning 360 degrees.
Oh, yeah.
It's something that's just been parodied so many times before at this point. But I found one really fun fact about it, which was that in order to test how realistic it was, they actually put the dummy of Regan in a taxi cab in the front seat. And when people were looking at it, they would like turn the head just to freak them out a little bit,
that'd be
which
so
is really
scary.
interesting. But the other thing too is if you look at it, there's still breath coming out of the dummy, which completely sold it for me when I rewatched it.
There's actually like a tube running up through the dummy's mouth, and
Oh, no way.
the head of the special effects team would like blow cigarette smoke through the tube to get that breath coming
Oh my
out.
God.
Oh, that's
It's like
right.
a great touch. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one other thing I wanted to touch on, in addition to Linda Blair's performance, she was nominated for an Academy Award and probably should have won Best Actress. But the reason, allegedly, that the Academy didn't give it to her was because of the voiceover that's happening. So that is obviously not Linda Blair's voice.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
The voiceover is by a woman of the name Mercedes McCambridge. And because of that voice performance, I think the Academy like didn't really believe that like Linda Blair was doing everything, even though she was. It was just this voice was layered on top of it for this scene.
Yeah. So Mercedes McCambridge, like you said, Connor, did the demon voice that's so iconic in the film. Her
Mhm.
voice is described as coarse and powerful in Blatty's script, which I think she absolutely fits the bill there.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Friedkin had first gotten in touch with her, and he remembered her having a deep voice that sounded kind of neutral, not too masculine, not too feminine.
Mhm.
And yeah, Mercedes was in AA at the time. She had been smoking for 30 years, and being a Catholic, I know it was difficult to achieve the raspy voice because she needed to drink bourbon, smoke, do things to her body she hadn't
God.
done in many,
Oh,
many
man.
years. She had two friends who are priests who she needed by her at all times during the recording process just for that like moral support. So
Yeah.
it's fascinating.
Jeez.
Like she took it to the extreme, and it took 3 weeks to do the dubbing. And she actually sat with her hands and feet bound to a chair, like at her own request, because she wanted
What?
to experience what Regan's going through when she's like feeling punished or she's suffering.
Hmm.
So she actually has those like bonds tightened. She would sip Jack Daniels throughout the day while swallowing raw eggs and smoking cigarettes to get that voice effect.
Gross.
It's
crazy.
Gosh.
Dedication.
Yeah.
Everyone involved on this project. What did you both think of Max von Sydow's performance in general, and then also Jason Miller? And let's talk a little bit about their physical presence
Mhm.
and the makeup involved there.
So what I didn't realize when I first watched the movie was that Max von Sydow is actually in his 40s when he's playing this role. He's playing the role of a priest in his 70s. So did you guys notice that he was wearing a lot of makeup? Was that apparent to you?
No, I had no idea. That's crazy.
That just hit me right now. I had no idea either.
His and Regan's makeup is done by the guy who did Don Corleone in The Godfather, like the best makeup artist of the day.
Wow.
It would take 4 hours to apply and 1 hour to remove. So he's got like layers of latex on his face. He's got dye in his hair to whiten it. And he's got liver spots painted on his hands. But he really embodies that body of a 70-year-old priest, the way he's like hunched over, moving around very gingerly, but also kind of like giving it everything he's got one last time in this scene.
And Jason Miller does an incredible job here too, because as you guys mentioned, one thing that really struck me about this scene is, he's wrestling with his faith, as we've mentioned throughout the whole movie. And there are times where he's just in awe of like the power of religion on this demon, that he forgets to say his lines in the scripture. You just kind of see him balance between being in awe, being a little bit scared, and then also being really angry when Regan takes the voice of his mother.
Yeah, and one of my favorite parts of the scene, one of the best shots in the film, really popular in the 70s for sure, is that slow telephoto zoom. Rather than like tracking in dolly shot or a static shot, they chose to use a telephoto lens and slowly zoom in to Father Karras as I think actually the last shot of the scene, where he's kind of contemplated what just happened. And it's just a great visual way of letting us into the interior of Karras and what's happening there, versus some like monologue where he's stating the theme of the film or what he's feeling. It's just such a great visually intriguing way to let us in as a viewer.
Yeah. And in addition to the really great camera work in this scene, the use of editing is really effective here, like where the edit chooses to cut or not cut. I read that Friedkin, who was in a time crunch to get this film out, used 4 editors plus 2 assistants for each editor to edit this film. So they were all editing different sections of the film at the same time. Chaotic way to edit a film. He would kind of go in and check on each of them for progress throughout the day. And one technique that he liked, which is kind of a recurring theme of 70s films of the era, is that they would either cut too soon or too late in the shot, which goes against the audience's expectation of where that cut would occur. And it really lends to that unsettling feeling of the whole film.
Yeah.
I completely noticed that there's a lot of hard cuts between different periods of the film.
Yeah.
And even time jumps too. And it definitely kind of gets you off kilter a little bit.
Yep.
Along the same theme, I also wanted to talk about the main score or kind of musical motif that's used. And even though it wasn't used in this specific scene, it's kind of that main musical theme that you hear when you hear The Exorcist. And it's actually written by Mike Oldfield, and it was called Tubular Bells. And after doing a little bit of research, I believe it's actually in 15/8 time, which is an extremely odd time signature. And it really gives the theme an off-balance feel, but it's also unrelenting because it's eighth notes, so they just kind of move pretty quickly. And interestingly enough, I also heard that there was a completely different score written for the film that was completely thrown away and not used.
Yeah, Friedkin actually went through a couple of different scoring artists before landing on Tubular Bells. So he originally got in contact with the guy who scored Psycho, a lot of other famous times, kind of the best working musician for movies at the time, and ultimately rejected his score. He rejected a score from Lalo Schifrin. So it got to a point where he was actually listening to hours and hours of tapes at the time, trying to find this certain musical quality that he was looking for, and came across Tubular Bells, which was from a new company called Virgin Records. And it would go on to be their first million-selling record and would eventually help launch Virgin Music. So it's kind of like an interesting fact. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, well, after all that searching, I'm glad that Friedkin landed on Tubular Bells because, like you were saying, Mark, it really adds to the atmosphere of not. It's not in the scene, but the movie as a whole, and just kind of setting the scene up for success. So, with that having covered the various elements of the scene, I guess thematically and in terms of the craft of it all, the practical effects, everything mixing together to create the most impressive showpiece
Hmm.
of the movie. Did you guys have any final thoughts on the scene itself or the film?
I really liked how this scene captured Father Karras's struggle to find his purpose in life almost. He really lost his way, and here we see him kind of realize that he needs to step in and save this girl and take this demon out of her. And it's a true test of his faith. And so thematically, I felt like it was a really impactful way to show that.
And for a movie called The Exorcist, you have to have the exorcism scene be, amazing, and
Yeah.
it truly delivers.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to the theming there, the character of it, just what they were able to pull off in terms of practical effects, just making this feel so tangible and textured. And it just speaks to the importance of doing whatever you can as real as you possibly can.
Hmm.
And it just adds to that
Hmm.
completely uncomfortable presence the movie has that sticks with you, years and years into the future after you've seen it. Just a really, really effective scene within a legendary film.
Yeah, no, I think that sums it up really well.
Well, yeah, I think that wraps up our discussion about The Exorcist. Thank you guys, as always, for your insights. And thank you to our listeners and fellow movie enthusiasts for reliving the scene with us. Do you have a favorite scene from The Exorcist? You can email us at contact@scenecraftpodcast.com with any of your thoughts or comments. Or follow us on Instagram, X, TikTok, or Threads at Scenecraft Podcast for any scheduling updates and news. You can also support the podcast by leaving us a review or star rating on your platform of choice. An extra special thanks to the wonderful Jordan Summerlad for his amazing theme music for our show. I think we all agreed that's like our favorite part
Oh, yeah.
about this project.
Love it.
So thank you, Jordan, for the extra spooky theme music for Halloween. This has been Scenecraft, where we break down the craft behind our favorite scenes. Happy Halloween, and see you all next time.